Hey guys, welcome to video number 2 in my Eating Disorder Awareness Week Q&A series. Today I'm answering the question, how long does recovery take? In this video, I will be talking about setting goals for yourself in recovery. I will be talking a bit about comparing yourself and your journey with others, and I'll be sharing a little bit of my own experience with recovery and what the process looked like for me. So let's just jump into it. For those of you who are new, my name is Lauren Bersalio. I am the founder and editor of LIBERO magazine. We are an online nonprofit magazine and community championing mental health, where you can find resources and support, and you can also share your own story. So when we're talking about how long recovery takes, first, of course, we have to answer the question, do we think recovery is possible, or do we think that being recovered is possible? And if so, what does that look like? What does that mean? So I'm actually going to direct you to yesterday's video where I answered that question. I'm going to link to it down below, so definitely check that out. Second thing we need to do is define our goals in recovery. So for me, my goal with recovery was to get to a point where eating disorder thoughts and behaviors no longer took control of my life and no longer had a significant impact of my life. Another goal that I had was to live for a prolonged period of time free from any relapses. I think it's really important when you're in recovery to avoid the trap of comparing your journey with other people's, especially when we're talking about how long recovery takes. I think it's really normal to look to other people and potentially feel like, you know, they're moving faster through recovery than you, they're further along than you are, they're better at recovery than you. And this is a really harmful trap to fall into because it can really stall your own recovery and it's not productive at all. I actually did a video quite a number of years ago on this topic. I was answering this actual question about how long recovery takes, but I really focused a lot on the comparison factor. So I'm going to link it down below and I encourage you guys to give that a watch if that resonates with you. In short, when it comes to comparing with other people, the truth of the matter is you don't know anyone else's journey, you don't know their story, and you don't know where they're actually at. So maybe they are further along than you, and that's okay. Maybe they are moving faster through recovery than you. That's also okay. But also, as a caveat, you don't really know. What you see on the outside, what you see kind of on the surface level or on social media might not actually represent where that person is at, which is why comparison is so dangerous. Because one, it can give us a false perception of where other people are at in their life, and two, where they're at doesn't really matter because it has nothing to do with you. Another thing that's really important on this topic is to not rush yourself and to not put a lot of pressure on yourself. Recovery takes hard work. I always say recovery is hard work, but living with an eating disorder is much harder. It's a huge transformative process. It takes a lot of inner work and therapy. You just can't rush those things. I like to see it as being depth over speed. It's not about how quickly you can recover. It's about how deep you can go in your recovery and how much transformation you're able to allow to take place through that journey. Part of that depth is going to involve addressing the root cause of your eating disorder. You don't want to just scrape the surface level and deal with behaviors. It's important to address behaviors, but it's also really important to look at what caused the eating disorder in the first place, because eating disorders really are a symptom of a deeper issue. It takes time to learn to eat intuitively. If intuitive eating or mindful eating is part of your recovery, it takes time to reshape your relationship with food and to learn how to listen to and honor your hunger and fullness cues and to know what you're truly craving. Another really important thing is to not regret relapses or slip-ups, to not beat yourself up. At the end of the day, relapses are part of recovery. I don't know if it would be recovery if there weren't any relapses or slip-ups. So instead of looking at those moments as, losing time, wasting time, falling backwards, Look at them as learning experiences, things that are actually moving you forward in your recovery. When you're going through recovery, in my personal experience, you're always moving forward. There isn't really such a thing as sliding backwards or taking steps back, because as time moves forward, your recovery moves forward, you're learning and growing and transforming, and it's all part of the package. So just accept that relapses are normal, address them and get help when they happen, of course, and keep moving forward and go easy on yourself. I'm not a medical professional, so all I have is my own experience living through an eating disorder and recovering from one. So I want to share my journey and roughly what it looked like. I don't want to do this as an opportunity for you to compare with my story. So if you feel like it wouldn't be helpful for you, then by all means, you don't have to continue watching this video. But if you're curious for a rough and realistic estimate of how long at least it took for me, then you can keep on watching. I started recovery in April of 2010. I began seeing a therapist at that time. I learned about intuitive eating, and I began opening up with those in my life about my eating disorder and recovery. And that's also coincidentally when I started LIBERO and started writing and doing videos online too. 2 years in, I still had the odd slip up and relapse, but it wasn't nearly as frequent as in the earlier stage in the first year of my recovery. I was starting to hit my stride with intuitive eating, still learning and figuring it out. Like I said, still going through the odd slip up or relapse. And one thing that did still really affect me was being around people who had a more disordered relationship with their body or with food. That was still a pretty big trigger for me at that time. So I definitely had stuff that I was still working through. By the time I hit year 3, I was really in a good place in regards to my eating. I was no longer experiencing any relapses. I was eating intuitively. I felt like I'd really transformed and reshaped my approach to food. And in addition to that, being around people who had more disordered relationships with food or with their bodies, or just generally being around conversations about diet talk and things like that, it didn't really impact me as much. For the most part, it definitely wasn't a trigger anymore. It was a bit emotionally kind of like I would get frustrated by it, but it didn't have the impact that it had the year before. Now, 9 years later, being around people who have disordered relationships with food or with their bodies doesn't really affect me as much. I still get like a little wound up by it, but it's not really a threat or a trigger at all. I don't have relapses anymore. That's not to say that it would never happen. I could never sit here and say I will never relapse, but I have yet to have one for the last 6+ years. And my relationship with food is good. I practice intuitive eating, intuitive and mindful eating. And generally, my focus now is just focusing on maintenance and my mental health. I'm still a work in progress. I don't think that like mental health has a time frame. Mental health, I don't think ever has like an end to it. It's an ongoing process. And so I still go to therapy, not as regularly as when I was in recovery, and I still work through my issues. I still struggle with anxiety. I still sometimes struggle with depression, but my eating disorder specifically is behind me. So in conclusion, the most important response I can give to how long does recovery take is it's different for everyone, and that's okay. And it takes as long as it needs to take, and that's okay. For me, my answer is it took roughly about 3 years, which may seem like a long time or might not seem long at all. And that's just my personal experience. Yours will probably be different. Don't rush yourself. Don't compare with other people. Don't hate relapses. Learn from them, grow from them, move forward. And above all else, love yourself, be kind to yourself. Keep believing that recovery is possible. Keep believing that recovery is for you. And I promise you that things do get better. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it encouraging if you are living with an eating disorder, if you're in recovery. Comment below if you have any more questions. I'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for my video tomorrow. Bye. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I encourage you to come check us out over at LIBEROmagazine.com. We are championing mental health We are sharing stories, we are posting articles that are support-oriented related to mental health, and I'd love for you to come and join us on social media as well. You can find all the information in the links down below.